Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift back in time, not to a battlefield or a king's court, but to a quiet, forgotten corner of the world, on a night when the sky itself seemed to tear open. We're journeying into the mind of a man who dreamed in lightning and thought in frequencies, a man who imagined the future we all now live in, long before it existed. We are, of course, talking about Nikola Tesla. You find yourself standing in a field just outside a small village as a summer storm begins to breathe across the landscape. The air is thick with the smell of ozone and damp earth. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to follow the life of this singular genius from his mythic birth to his lonely end. And let's be honest, given the sheer electrical voltage, both literal and metaphorical, that surrounded this man, you probably won't survive this with your understanding of the world intact. But that's the fun of it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for a bit of fun, post your location and local time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see where everyone is drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rain begins softly at first, a gentle patter on the leaves of the hardy trees that cling to the rolling hills of Lika. You're in the heart of the Austrian Empire. In the year 1856, a place and time that feels both ancient and on the cusp of something new. The village before you is Smiljan, little more than a cluster of sturdy, dark wood houses huddled around a small, white Serbian Orthodox church. Smoke curls lazily from a few chimneys, a pale gray against the bruised purple of the twilight sky. It's a world away from anything you know. There are no power lines humming overhead, no screens glowing in the windows, no distant rumble of traffic. There isn't even a Wi-Fi password to ask for. The only sounds are the rising wind, the distant, nervous bleating of sheep, and now, the low, deep growl of thunder gathering its strength in the mountains. You feel a pull toward one particular house, modest but well kept, standing beside the church. It is the home of the village priest, Nikola Tesla. Inside, through the soft, flickering glow of candlelight you can just make out through a window, a different kind of storm is brewing. A life is about to begin. As the night deepens, the storm outside intensifies, matching the drama within. The wind howls now, and flashes of lightning begin to illuminate the entire valley in stark, silent bursts of white. One moment, you see every rock, every blade of grass, every shingle on the roof. The next, you are plunged back into an almost total darkness, your eyes struggling to adjust. It is said that at the stroke of midnight, just as a particularly brilliant and violent crack of lightning splits the sky, the baby is born. He is a boy. The midwife, a practical woman of the village, but clearly shaken by the celestial drama, holds the infant up. The story goes that she turns to the exhausted mother, Juka, and shakes her head. "This boy will be a child of darkness," she says, gesturing to the storm, seeing it as a terrible omen. But his mother, a woman of quiet strength and formidable intelligence herself, gazes at her son and then at the window, which is once again lit by a silent, powerful flash. She smiles, and her voice is firm. "No," she replies, "he will be a child of light." Historians still argue whether this dramatic exchange actually occurred, or if it was a story Tesla himself, a master showman in his own right, polished and promoted later in life to create a more fitting origin myth. It certainly seems a little too perfect, doesn't it? A man destined to master electricity, born in the heart of a thunderstorm? But whether fact or beautiful fiction, it speaks to a truth about the world he was born into, a world of superstition and folklore, where the sky's fury could be seen as either a curse or a blessing, a world that this tiny child, now sleeping peacefully despite the continuing rage of the storm, would one day change forever by harnessing that very power. You linger outside in the cooling, rain-soaked air, watching the lights in the priest's house. The storm eventually rumbles its way past, leaving behind a profound stillness and the clean, earthy scent of a world washed new. As the years begin to drift by, you watch this child of light grow. Young Nikola is different. He is not like the other village boys. While they are rough and tumble, he is introspective and startlingly imaginative. He possesses what he would later describe as a photographic memory and an almost unnerving ability to visualize complex machinery in his mind, to build, test, and even run these imaginary devices without ever touching a single tool. He could see them, feel them, know if they were balanced or flawed, all within the private workshop of his own consciousness. He was, in essence, running virtual reality simulations a century and a half before the term even existed. It's like a child today being given a universe of Legos, but never needing to open the box. His father, Milutin, a stern but well-educated man, pushes his son toward the priesthood, urging him to strengthen his memory and will through rigorous mental exercises. He has Nikola memorize long passages of scripture and perform complex mental calculations. But it is his mother, Juka, who truly nurtures the boy's innate talents. She herself is an inventor of sorts. Though her world is confined to the domestic sphere, she creates her own tools for weaving and needlework, designs improvements for the butter churn and other household appliances, and is known throughout the region for her skill. She cannot read, yet she can recite thousands of lines of Serbian epic poetry. She understands that her son's mind is a special place, and she encourages his unique way of seeing the world. He later credited his inventive spark entirely to her genetic influence and nurturing spirit. You see him as a small boy, wandering the fields, his mind alight with ideas that would seem like madness to anyone else. He tries to fly by, jumping off the roof of the family barn while holding a broken umbrella, an experiment that ends, predictably, with a rather hard landing. A bit of a miscalculation on the lift-to-drag ratio, perhaps. He builds a motor powered by June bugs, a slightly horrifying but undeniably creative contraption. He watches a cat, stroking its fur in the dry air and seeing tiny sparks of static electricity jump to his fingers, and he is mesmerized. He asks his father what it is, and the priest sagely replies, "Well, this is nothing but electricity, the same thing you see through the trees in a storm." The boy is captivated. That invisible force, the same one that lit the sky on the night of his birth, was here, in his own home, in the fur of a cat. The world, he begins to realize, is not what it seems. It is a place of hidden energies, of secret currents, of a deep and powerful magic that was simply waiting for someone to understand its language. And in the quiet nights of Smiljan, under a vast and silent blanket of stars, a young boy begins his lifelong quest to learn that language, to not just understand the lightning, but to command it. You watch as the boy grows into a young man, and the chasm between his father's wishes and his own destiny widens. His father, the Orthodox priest, sees a future for his brilliant son in the church, a path of stability, respect, and contemplation. But for Nikola, contemplation isn't about theology. It's about the invisible rivers of energy that flow through the universe. He sees his future not in a pulpit, but in a laboratory. He yearns to go to university, to study physics and engineering, to understand the formal laws that govern the magic he has felt since childhood. The pressure is immense, a quiet but constant weight in the priest's house. But fate, it seems, has a flair for the dramatic, and it is about to intervene in a most terrifying way. At the age of 17, just as he is due to begin his theological training, Nikola falls desperately ill. It's cholera, a scourge of the 19th century, and it hits him with brutal force. The vibrant, imaginative young man is reduced to a whisper, a pale figure wasting away in his bed. The doctors of the region give him up for lost, offering no hope. For months, he hovers in that liminal space between life and death. You can almost feel the oppressive quiet of the sick room, the air thick with the scent of herbal remedies and fear. The only sound the shallow, ragged breathing of the boy in the bed. His body is failing, but his mind, even in its delirium, is still working, still churning. During one of his lowest moments, when it seems the end is truly near, his father comes to his bedside, his face a mask of grief. Milutin, a man defined by his faith and his patriarchal certainty, is utterly broken by the sight of his dying son. In a moment of pure desperation, trying to coax a flicker of life back into him, Nikola whispers that perhaps he could get better, if only he were allowed to study engineering. It is a shot in the dark, a final plea. His father, seeing his last hope slipping away, makes a solemn promise right there in the quiet, dim room. You will go to the best technical institution in the world, he vows, his voice thick with emotion. It's the ultimate celestial negotiation tactic, a bargain made with God, or fate, or whatever power might be listening, using his son's dream as the offering. And miraculously, almost incomprehensibly, the tide begins to turn. The fever starts to recede. The strength, little by little, begins to return to his limbs. The cholera releases its grip. Nikola Tesla would live, true to his word. His father sends him not to the seminary, but to Graz, to the prestigious Austrian Polytechnic School. The year is 1875, and as you follow him into the hallowed halls of the university, you can feel his exhilaration. This is where he belongs. The air smells of chalk dust, old paper, and the faint, metallic tang of scientific apparatus. He dives into his studies with an intensity that is frankly terrifying. He claims to study from 3 in the morning until 11 at night, every single day. No weekends, no holidays. It's a regimen that makes your most stressful all-nighter for a final exam look like a relaxing spa day. He devours knowledge, acing exam after exam, his professors initially hailing him as a star of the first rank. But his unique way of seeing the world soon brings him into conflict with that same academic establishment. The pivotal moment comes in his second year, during a demonstration of a new device from Paris, a Gram dynamo. It's a type of direct current, or DC generator, as the professor proudly shows it off. Nikola, watching intently from his seat, observes the angry blue sparks that crackle and spit from the machine's commutators, the brushes that allow the current to flow in one direction. To the professor, this is a normal, if slightly inefficient, part of the machine's operation. To Tesla, it's a fundamental flaw. It's messy. It's wasteful. It's an offense to the elegant purity of electrical principles. He stands up and suggests that the commutators are entirely unnecessary, that a motor could be run without them. The professor stops the demonstration and looks at him with academic scorn. To design a motor without commutators, he explains with condescending patience, would be to create an alternating current motor, which is impossible. He compares the idea to building a perpetual motion machine, the ultimate symbol of crackpot science. He dedicates the rest of the lecture to dismantling Tesla's absurd notion. Tesla is humiliated, but not defeated. He is certain he is right. The professor's dismissal doesn't extinguish the fire. It focuses it into a laser. The problem of a brushless, alternating current motor now becomes his obsession. However, the sheer intensity of his studies and his growing obsession take their toll. Some historians question whether his departure from the university was solely due to a gambling addiction that emerged in his third year, as is commonly cited, or if it was a more complex breakdown fueled by burnout and frustration. The records are murky. His family, for a time, believes he is drowned in a river. What is known is that he cuts ties with everyone, drifts to Maribor, and spends a period working as a draftsman, his great mind lost in a haze of card games and billiards. It's a profoundly human moment of failure, a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can lose their way. Eventually, he is found and forced to return home, a university dropout, his bright future seemingly extinguished. For a while, he teaches at his old primary school, his dreams of revolutionizing the world now confined to a small classroom. But the fire is not out. In 1880, with funding from his uncles, he leaves for Prague, hoping to continue his education, but arrives too late to enroll. He audits classes, spends his days in the library, and then, in 1881, moves to Budapest to work at the National Telephone Exchange. It is here, while recovering his health and his purpose, that the moment of pure, unadulterated genius strikes. The evening is cool and clear. You see him walking through a city park with his friend, Antal Szigeti. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep violet. Tesla is feeling better than he has in years, and in his expansive mood, he is reciting poetry aloud, Goethe's Faust. He speaks the powerful, resonant lines about the sun yielding to the dying day, and then he simply stops. He freezes mid-stride, his eyes fixed on the fading light, but seeing something else entirely. Szigeti asks him what's wrong, but Tesla is no longer there. He is somewhere else, in the realm of pure visualization. The solution to the problem that has haunted him since that lecture hall in Graz, the answer that eluded professors and engineers across the globe, simply appears in his mind, not as a theory, not as a formula, but as a fully formed working reality, a rotating magnetic field, the key to the AC motor. He grabs a stick and, in the sand of the park path, he draws the diagrams, the elegant, revolutionary schematics for a new age of power, sketched in the dirt as the last light of day faded from the sky. The sparks from the Graham dynamo had been answered. The professor had been proven wrong. And Nikola Tesla, the dropout, the gambler, the The drawing in the sand is a moment of pure, crystalline clarity. But the world, you soon discover, is not made of sand. It is made of stubborn habits and established interests. With the beautiful, world-changing designs for his alternating current motor burning in his mind, Tesla now faces a much more mundane challenge finding someone to listen. You follow him from Budapest to Paris, where he gets a job with the Continental Edison Company. He is a brilliant problem solver, dispatched to fix issues with Edison's direct current power plants in France and Germany. He tinkers, he improves, he over-delivers, and in his spare time, he builds his first prototype of the AC induction motor. It works. It works just as he knew it would, a humming, elegant, sparkless marvel. He presents his creation to his managers, to local investors, to anyone who will see it. They are politely impressed. It's a clever toy, a neat scientific curiosity, but a replacement for Edison's well-established DC system, unthinkable. The infrastructure was already being laid. Money was already being made. Why change a winning formula for some poetic-sounding theory about rotating magnetic fields Europe? It seems, wasn't quite ready to swipe right on his revolutionary profile. Frustration begins to set in. He is a man living in the future, surrounded by people perfectly content with the present. There is only one place left to go, a place built on grand, improbable ideas, a place where the man who represented the pinnacle of invention resided. America. And more specifically, the workshop of Thomas Alva Edison. He makes his decision. He gathers his meager savings and books passage on a ship bound for New York. As you stand with him on the deck, feeling the gentle roll of the Atlantic beneath your feet, you can sense his restless energy. The sea is vast, a seemingly endless expanse of gray-blue water, but his mind is already across it, running calculations, dreaming of dynamos and generators on a continental scale. The journey itself is fraught with peril. Academic circles remain divided about the exact details of what happened next, but the story that has been passed down is one of disastrous luck, a mutiny, a theft, a chaotic scramble on board somewhere in the crossing. His ticket is stolen, along with his money and most of his luggage. He arrives at the port of New York in the summer of 1884, not as a conquering hero of science, but as just another bewildered immigrant. He steps onto the grimy cobblestones of Manhattan with, according to the legend, 4 cents in his pocket, a book of his favorite poems, some lingering calculations for a flying machine, and a single, precious letter of introduction. His plan for arriving in style had hit a minor snag, to put it mildly. Take a moment and stand with him on that street corner. The sensory overload is staggering. After the cultivated elegance of old-world European capitals, New York is a beast. It's a city of raw, untamed energy, a vertical explosion of brick and iron still grappling with its own astonishing growth. The air is thick and tastes of coal smoke, roasting chestnuts from a street vendor's cart, and the faint, briny smell of the nearby harbor. The noise is a constant, deafening symphony, iron-shod wheels of horse-drawn wagons clattering on the stones, newsboys shouting headlines, the distant clang of a trolley bell, and the percussive hiss of steam from 1,000 pipes and engines. And when you look up, you see the physical evidence of the man he has come to meet. A chaotic, ugly web of wires crisscrosses the sky, drooping precariously between poles. It's Edison's DC power system, and it looks less like an elegant grid and more like a flock of metallic spaghetti had exploded over the city. This is the system Tesla knows is flawed, the system he has come to replace. He asks a policeman for directions, his tall, slender frame and formal European suit standing out in the sea of working men and hurried merchants. He is headed for the Lower East Side, to Edison's machine works. As he walks, you see the two Americas of the Gilded Age. The astonishing wealth of the new industrial titans is just a few blocks away. But here, it is a world of crowded tenements, bustling workshops, and palpable ambition. He finally finds the address, a grimy, multi-story brick building, humming with the sound of machinery. This is not a pristine laboratory. This is a factory, a place of work, of dirt, and of production. This is the temple of the world's most famous inventor. He is shown in, and there, amidst the clutter of tools, wires, and half-finished projects, is the man himself, Thomas Edison. He is 37 years old, just 9 years older than Tesla, but he seems to belong to a different generation, a different species, where Tesla is tall, lean, and ethereal, with a precise mustache and a poet's eyes. Edison is solid, earthy, and rumpled. His hair is unkempt, his clothes are stained, and he has a shrewd, impatient look in his eyes. He is the master of trial and error, of brute force experimentation. He famously said that genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, and he looks like he has been perspiring. Tesla, the man who builds and tests machines in the perfect, clean laboratory of his mind, is his polar opposite. Tesla hands him the letter of introduction from Charles Batchelor, his old boss in Paris. Edison reads it, a flicker of interest crossing his face. The letter contains a sentence that has since become legendary. "My dear Edison, I have known two great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Edison looks up, chewing on a piece of tobacco, and sizes up the young Serb before him. Tesla, with his formal European manners, immediately launches into a passionate, eloquent explanation of his ideas for alternating current, of the rotating magnetic field, of a world powered by elegant, high-voltage electricity that could travel for hundreds of miles. Edison listens, but he is not a man for grand theories. He is a man of practical results. He cuts him short. He thinks the ideas are interesting, but utterly impractical. "You are a poet of science," he says, and it is not entirely a compliment. He has no interest in AC. He has invested everything, his reputation, his money, his entire infrastructure in DC. But he can see that this strange, intense young man has a brilliant, practical mind, even if it is attached to some fantastical theories. He needs good engineers, men who can get their hands dirty and solve the constant problems plaguing his DC systems. And so, right there on the spot, he offers Tesla a job. The pay is $18 a week. The task is not to invent the future, but to fix the present, to repair and improve Edison's DC dynamos. It is not the grand welcome he had envisioned, but it is a start. He is in. He is working for the great Thomas Edison, and as he leaves the workshop that evening and steps back out into the chaotic roar of New York, he has no idea that he is standing at the epicenter of a war that is about to begin, a war that will pit his vision against that of the most famous inventor on Earth. You follow Tesla as he steps into the relentless rhythm of the Edison machine works. This is not a place for quiet contemplation. It is a crucible, forged in the fires of Edison's own obsessive work ethic. The air is perpetually hazy with the smoke from machines and cigars, and the floor is a treacherous landscape of wires, tools, and metal shavings. The rule here is simple produce. Edison has gathered a team of bright young men, his insomnia squad, who are expected to work all hours to solve problems on the fly and to fuel the rapid expansion of his DC empire. And into this chaotic, high-pressure environment, Tesla fits like a key in a lock he designed himself. In fact, he works with such ferocious dedication that he makes the rest of Edison's insomnia squad look like they are constantly hitting the snooze button. His brilliance is immediately apparent. Problems that have stumped Edison's other engineers for weeks, Tesla solves in a single night. He doesn't just fix things, he fundamentally reimagines them, making them more efficient, more elegant, more logical. He is given the task of repairing the troublesome dynamos aboard the SS Oregon, one of the first ocean liners to be lit by electricity. The system, a point of pride for Edison, had been plagued by failures. Tesla goes to the ship, stays up all night, and not only fixes the immediate problem, but completely redesigns the generators on the spot. When Edison, arriving in the morning with a crew of his other engineers, sees the perfectly functioning system, he can only shake his head in disbelief, remarking that his new hire is a darn good man. This sets the stage for a much larger proposal. Edison's DC power system, for all its success, was inefficient. The generators were costly to run and maintain. This was the bottleneck to his entire operation. Seeing Tesla's incredible talent, Edison, or perhaps one of his senior managers, as the exact source of the offer is one of history's great ambiguities, makes him a staggering proposition. Biographers and historians continue to debate the precise nature of this conversation. Was it a firm offer from the boss himself, or an off-the-cuff motivational remark from a subordinate that the earnest Tesla took as gospel? Whatever the case, the promise, as Tesla understood it, was this: if he could successfully redesign Edison's standard DC dynamos, improving their efficiency and solving their core issues, he would be paid a bonus of $50,000. $50,000. Let's just pause and appreciate that number in 1885. This isn't buy a new horse and carriage money. This is buy the whole stable, the farm next to it, and maybe a small island money. It was a life-changing fortune, more than enough for him to leave Edison and start his own laboratory, to fund his own AC research, to finally bring the vision from the Budapest Park to life. For Tesla, this wasn't just about the money, it was a validation. It was the great Edison himself acknowledging his genius and putting a price on it. And so, he throws himself into the task with an almost manic energy. For months, the workshop is his entire world. You see him there night after night, long after the other engineers have gone home. The solitary, lean figure bent over schematics under the harsh glare of a single incandescent bulb, one of Edison's own. His mind, that perfect internal laboratory, is running at full capacity. He visualizes new armature windings, improved regulators, more stable commutators. He fills notebook after notebook with calculations and drawings. He works not just to improve the existing machines, but to create a whole new generation of them. He develops and patents 24 different types of improvements for Edison's company, simplifying the designs and dramatically increasing their output and economic efficiency. He has done it. He has fulfilled his end of the bargain, and then some. Finally, the work is complete. The new designs are tested and proven. He has saved the Edison Company a vast sum of money and has solved the fundamental problems that plagued their system. He walks into his boss's office, exhausted but triumphant, and politely asks for the promised compensation. And it is here that the paths of these two great inventors diverge forever. Edison seems surprised by the request. He laughs. According to Tesla's own account, Edison's reply was devastatingly simple. "Tesla," he said, with a dismissive wave of his hand. "You don't understand our American humor." The words hang in the air, thick and cold. A joke. $50,000. The months of relentless work. The sheer genius poured into the project, all dismissed as a misunderstanding of a casual, American-style joke. A punchline that has gone down in history as possibly the most expensive and poorly landed of all time. Edison, ever the pragmatist, saw the offer as hyperbole, a figure of speech meant to encourage hard work. He offers Tesla a raise of $10 a week on his $18 salary. To Edison, this was a fair reward. To Tesla, it was a profound, soul-crushing insult. It wasn't about the specific amount of money anymore. It was about the principle. It was about honor. It was about the casual dismissal of a promise made, a feat accomplished. In that moment, the admiration he held for Edison curdles into something else. He sees not a fellow genius, but a mere tinkerer, a businessman who lacked the vision and the integrity to appreciate true scientific revolution. His response is quiet and immediate. He simply says, "I am sorry, but I cannot accept," and resigns on the spot. He walks out of the Edison Machine Works for the last time, leaving behind the heat, the noise, and the broken promise. He steps out into the harsh reality of a New York winter, and his fortunes plummet. The brilliant inventor, the man who had just redesigned an entire industrial system, is now just another unemployed immigrant. The winter of 1886 is brutal. To survive, he is forced to take any work he can find. You see him now, a world away from the humming dynamos, his fine, slender hands calloused and raw from manual labor. He is working as a ditch digger, earning a meager $2 a day, his great mind occupied with the simple, back-breaking task of moving earth. He digs trenches to lay the very same electrical cables for the very same DC systems he had perfected. The irony is almost too cruel to bear. At night, he sleeps in cheap boarding houses, hungry and cold, questioning everything. Was America a land of promise, or a land of cynical jokes? In the depths of that winter, surrounded by the mud and sweat of manual labor, the war of currents truly began. It was no longer a polite disagreement over engineering principles. It was personal. And as he dug, he dreamed not of fixing Edison's system, but of burying it. You remain with him in the cold mud of the trench, the sky above a sliver of gray between the looming brick walls of New York City. The work is grueling, mindless, a physical punishment that seems designed to mock his intellectual gifts. But even here, in the depths of his despair, the spark of his unique personality cannot be extinguished. During breaks, he speaks with the other laborers, and it is his speech, his refined European accent, and the startling breadth of his knowledge that betrays him. He doesn't talk like a ditch digger. The foreman of the crew, a man who has seen all types come and go, takes notice. He sees the incongruity of this tall, eloquent man performing such base labor. A point of contention among scholars is the exact motivation and awareness of this foreman. Was he simply a kind soul who recognized a man out of his element, or was he more connected than history remembers? understanding that this was the very same Serbian genius who had recently walked out on Thomas Edison. Whatever the truth, he acts as the catalyst for Tesla's resurrection. He knows this man does not belong in a ditch. He makes an introduction, connecting Tesla with two men he thinks might be interested in his ideas: Alfred S. Brown, a superintendent at Western Union, and Charles F. Peck, a lawyer and promoter. It turns out the fastest way to climb the corporate ladder is, occasionally, to start by digging a trench right next to it. The meeting is a world away from the grandeur of the Edison works. It's likely held in a modest office, or perhaps over a simple meal. But here, with these two practical businessmen, Tesla finds the audience he has been searching for. He doesn't have a prototype to show them. He has only his words, his mind, and the burning conviction in his eyes. You can imagine him, his hands probably still rough from the manual labor, sketching his ideas on a napkin, explaining the concept of a rotating magnetic field, the inefficiency of DC, the promise of an alternating current that could transmit power not for a single mile, but for hundreds of miles. Brown and Peck are not scientists like Edison, nor are they visionaries like Tesla. They are something just as important: savvy investors who can smell an opportunity. They understand the limitations of Edison's system and see the monumental financial potential in a system that could do what he claimed. They agree to take a gamble. In April of 1887, they put up the money to form the Tesla Electric Company. It isn't much, but it's everything. They secure a small laboratory for him on Liberty Street, just a few short blocks from Edison's headquarters. The proximity feels like a declaration of intent. You can feel the wave of relief and vindication wash over Tesla as he steps into his own space for the first time. It is a sanctuary. No more bosses with a poor sense of humor. No more ditch digging. Just a room filled with tools, wires, and the limitless potential of his own mind. Here, in the quiet of his own lab, he works with a renewed and joyful intensity. He refines the designs he first sketched in the sand in Budapest. He builds the motors, the generators, the transformers. He creates not just a single invention, but a complete, elegant, and interlocking polyphase AC system. It is the realization of a decade of dreaming. He now holds the master patents for the technology that will, without exaggeration, power the entire 20th century. But patents are just paper. To win the war, he needs to win over the public and, more importantly, the industrialists. He begins to stage a series of dramatic demonstrations at his lab. He is not just a scientist, he is a showman. He understands that people need to see the magic to believe in the science. The centerpiece of his demonstrations is a device he calls the Egg of Columbus. He places a copper, egg-shaped object on a wooden platform. With a theatrical flourish, he flips a switch. The egg begins to wobble, then spin, faster and faster, until it stands on its end, a blur of motion. There are no wires connected to it, no visible forces acting upon it. To the audience, it is sorcery. To Tesla, it is simply a beautiful illustration of his rotating magnetic field, the same principle that drives his motor. It was the ultimate 19th century, look, no hands, magic trick, but the magic was pure, unadulterated physics. Word of these spectacular demonstrations and the powerful patents they represent begins to spread through the scientific and financial communities. And that word eventually reaches the ears of the one man in America who could truly understand what Tesla had accomplished, and who had the industrial might to challenge Edison. George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was a giant of American industry, a millionaire inventor in his own right, who had made his fortune with the revolutionary Westinghouse air brake for trains. He was Edison's chief rival, a fellow titan cut from a different cloth, where Edison was the scrappy, self-taught tinkerer. Westinghouse was a brilliant, methodical engineer who built empires. He had already been experimenting with alternating current, using European patents, but his systems were inefficient. He knew AC was the future, but he was missing the key component, a practical, working AC motor. When he heard about Tesla's patents, he realized he had found his missing piece. In 1888, Westinghouse travels to Tesla's humble lab on Liberty Street. This meeting is entirely different from the one with Edison. Westinghouse, a seasoned engineer, doesn't need to be convinced by poetry or showmanship. He looks at the motors, he listens to Tesla's explanations, and he understands instantly. He sees the genius not just in the idea, but in the elegant, practical application. There is an immediate respect between the two men. They are speaking the same language. After the demonstration, Westinghouse makes an offer that will change the course of history. He offers Tesla $60,000 in cash and stock for his polyphase patents, a significant sum, but that's not the best part. He also offers a royalty for every single horsepower of electricity sold that uses his system. Tesla will receive $250. It was a deal so good it would make even the most jaded modern-day contract lawyer weep with joy. It was not just a payment. It was a partnership. It was recognition. It was the promise of a lifelong income stream tied directly to the success of his own invention. Tesla accepts without hesitation. He has found his champion. He sells his patents and moves to Pittsburgh to work alongside the engineers at the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company. The lonely battle of one man against an empire is over. Now, it is a war between titans. Westinghouse versus Edison, AC versus DC, and at the heart of the conflict, providing the intellectual and inventive firepower, is the dreamer from Smiljan, the ditch digger from New York, who was finally on the verge of lighting up the world. The alliance with Westinghouse gives Tesla the industrial muscle he desperately needed, but it also paints a giant target on his back. The battle for America's electrical future now escalates into a full-blown war, and it gets ugly, fast. You see, Thomas Edison did not become the titan of invention by playing nice. Faced with a genuine threat to his DC empire, he unleashes a ferocious propaganda campaign against Westinghouse and alternating current. It's a smear campaign so intense it would make modern political attack ads look like friendly suggestion cards. The central theme of the campaign is fear. Edison and his associates publicly proclaim that AC is excessively dangerous, a deadly current that will inevitably lead to gruesome accidents. They hold public demonstrations, not of wonder and light, but of death. Stray animals are brought on stage and publicly electrocuted with high-voltage alternating current to shock the audience and horrify the press. They coin the term Westinghoused as a synonym for being accidentally killed by electricity. It's a matter of historical discussion how much of this campaign was driven by a genuine, albeit misguided, fear of a technology Edison didn't fully understand, and how much was a cold, calculated business strategy designed to crush a competitor by any means necessary. Whatever the motive, the effect is chilling. Headlines scream about the dangers of AC, and a cloud of fear and suspicion begins to form around the Westinghouse Tesla system. They are losing the public relations battle. They need a stage, a grand, undeniable spectacle to prove to the world that AC is not only powerful, but also safe and beautiful. That stage is about to be built on the shores of Lake Michigan. It is the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, a celebration of the 400th anniversary of Columbus's arrival in the Americas. It is designed to be the greatest fair in the history of the world. An entire, magnificent white city of enormous, neoclassical buildings is constructed from plaster, creating a temporary dreamscape of soaring domes and majestic halls. And the crowning glory of this fair, the thing that will make it a legend, is that it is to be lit by electricity on a scale never before imagined. The contract to illuminate the Chicago World's Fair becomes the ultimate prize in the war of currents. Whoever lights the fair will have their system showcased to millions of visitors from around the globe. It is a winner-take-all fight for the future. Edison's newly formed conglomerate, General Electric, feels it has the contract in the bag. They are the incumbents, the safe choice. They submit a bid for over $1.5 million. But Westinghouse and Tesla see their moment. This is their chance to break through the wall of fear and lies. They consult their books, sharpen their pencils, and decide to gamble. They submit a dramatically lower bid, coming in nearly $1 million under General Electric. They are essentially offering to light the fair at cost, or even at a loss, because they know the victory would be priceless. The Fairs Committee, swayed by the massive cost savings, makes a bold decision. They award the contract to Westinghouse. The victory sends a shockwave through the industry, but the celebration is short-lived. Now, they have to deliver. The scale of the project is terrifying. They are tasked with installing and running generators that can power over 100,000 electric lamps. But they hit a major snag. General Electric, furious at losing the contract, engages in a bit of corporate hardball. They refuse to sell Westinghouse any of their patented and highly efficient incandescent bulbs. It's a classic case of, if you can't beat 'em, refuse to sell 'em your light bulbs. A bold, if rather unsporting, move. Westinghouse and Tesla are faced with a potentially catastrophic problem. They have the contract to light the world, but they have no lights. This is where their resilience and ingenuity shine. Instead of capitulating, their engineers, under immense pressure, invent an entirely new light bulb from scratch. It's called the Westinghouse stopper bulb, a clever two-piece design that manages to circumvent GE's patents. It isn't as efficient or as durable, but it works, and they can produce them by the thousands. They gear up for production, a frantic race against time to manufacture the dynamos, the wiring, and 100,000 of their new, untested light bulbs. Finally, the day arrives. It is May 1st, 1893. Evening is falling. You are standing with a vast crowd of over 100,000 people in the Grand Basin, the heart of the White City. The immense, pearly white buildings around you are sinking into the deep blue of twilight. There is a palpable sense of anticipation in the air, a collective holding of breath. On a grandstand, President Grover Cleveland stands before a golden telegraph key. He gives a short speech, and then he presses the key. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. A profound silence hangs over the crowd, and then it happens. In an instant, in a silent, blossoming explosion of brilliance, the entire White City flashes into existence. 100,000 points of light trace the outlines of the magnificent buildings, reflecting in the dark, still water of the basin. The court of honor is bathed in a soft, steady, ethereal glow, a light brighter than 1,000 moons. The crowd gasps, a single, unified sound of pure astonishment, which is then immediately followed by a roar of thunderous applause. People are cheering, weeping, staring in stunned silence. They are not just seeing electric light. They are seeing a new world being born right before their eyes. This is not the dangerous, deadly current from Edison's horror stories. This is a force of sublime beauty and transformative power. And in the great hall of machinery, Tesla himself holds court. He is the wizard at the heart of the magic. He puts on his own incredible show, demonstrating the wonders of his system. He stands on a platform, and high-frequency alternating current is passed safely through his own body, causing a light bulb held in his bare hand to burst into flame-like brilliance. It was a demonstration that was part physics lecture, part rock concert, and probably a terrible idea to try at home. He shows off his wireless lamps, glowing tubes that light up with no connection at all, powered by an invisible field of energy. He dazzles them with his egg of Columbus. He is not a distant corporate figure. He is a master showman, a scientific evangelist showing the world that his creation is one of wonder. The Chicago World's Fair is an absolute world-changing triumph for alternating current. For 6 months, millions of people wander through the illuminated dreamscape, forever associating the miracle of electric light with the names Westinghouse and Tesla. The fear campaign is broken. The argument is over. AC has won. And as the fair comes to a close, and the temporary White City prepares to be dismantled, the real work can begin, the work. The glow of the Chicago World's Fair fades as the magnificent White City is dismantled, but the light it cast on the future of electricity is permanent. Alternating current is no longer a curiosity. It is the proven champion. But now, a new, even greater challenge looms. A challenge that will take Tesla's system from the realm of spectacle to the bedrock of civilization. The goal is no longer just to light a city for a summer, but to power a nation indefinitely. And the source of that power is waiting, a churning, roaring, unconquered beast of nature, Niagara Falls. For centuries, you see, Niagara Falls was a destination for poets, painters, and honeymooners. It was a symbol of the sublime, of nature's untamable power. But for engineers and industrialists of the late 19th century, that thundering cascade of water represented something else entirely wasted energy. An immense, continuous source of power, just waiting to be tapped. The dream of harnessing Niagara was not new, but every attempt had fallen short. Small water wheels could power a single nearby mill, but no one had figured out how to capture the truly colossal energy of the falls and, crucially, how to send that power to the cities and factories where it was needed. Edison's DC system was a non-starter. Its 1-mile transmission limit meant you'd have to build your city right on the riverbank, which wasn't exactly practical. To solve this monumental problem, the International Niagara Commission was formed, a kind of supergroup of the world's leading engineers and scientists. Their task was to evaluate all proposals and crown the winning technology that would tame the falls. And their leader was the most respected physicist of the age, Lord Kelvin. Kelvin was a titan of science, a brilliant mind, but he was also deeply conservative when it came to electrical engineering. He was, for a long time, basically the world's most distinguished and respected hater of alternating current. He distrusted it, calling it dangerous and unproven. He publicly declared that the commission's best bet was DC, and famously stated to the lead engineer, "I hope you will avoid the gigantic mistake of adopting alternating current." This put Westinghouse and Tesla in a difficult position. The world's leading authority on the matter was dead set against their system. But then, the Chicago World's Fair happened. The undeniable, brilliant success of the White City sent a ripple of reality through the Commission's theoretical debates. They saw, with their own eyes, a system that worked flawlessly on a massive scale. They saw its safety, its efficiency, and its beauty. There remains some academic debate over what precisely caused the tide to turn within the Commission. Was it the sheer, irrefutable technical superiority demonstrated at the fair that finally convinced a reluctant Lord Kelvin? Or were there also significant financial and political pressures from the American backers of the project? Men who saw that the Westinghouse bid was far more economically ambitious and viable than any DC proposal could ever be. Whatever the final push was, the result was a complete reversal against his own long-held beliefs. Lord Kelvin and the Commission conceded. The evidence was simply too overwhelming to ignore. In 1893, they officially awarded the contract for the Niagara Falls power project to George Westinghouse. Tesla's AC system would be the one to harness the waterfall. The victory was immense, dwarfing even the triumph at Chicago. This wasn't a temporary installation. This was the construction of a new wonder of the modern world. The scale of the undertaking is difficult to comprehend. This wasn't just a construction project. It was like trying to surgically attach a power plug to a force of nature. You find yourself standing near the precipice of the falls, the roar a constant, physical presence that you feel in your chest. The air is thick with a perpetual mist, and all around you is the controlled chaos of the greatest engineering project of its time. Thousands of workers, many of them recent immigrants from Italy, Poland, and across Europe, swarm over the site. You hear the sharp clang of hammer on steel, the shouts of foremen, and the ground-shaking boom of dynamite blasts echoing from deep within the earth. The plan itself is audacious. A long canal diverts a fraction of the mighty Niagara River's water, feeding it into a massive powerhouse built just upstream from the falls. From there, the water plummets down enormous vertical shafts, or penstocks, drilled 160 feet straight down into the solid rock. At the bottom of these pits, the water strikes the blades of massive turbines, spinning them with incredible force. These turbines, in turn, are connected by long steel shafts back up to the powerhouse on the surface, where they spin the armatures of 10 colossal generators. Each generator, a 5,000 horsepower behemoth, is a direct, scaled-up descendant of the diagrams Tesla drew in the sand. His dream of a rotating magnetic field is now being realized in a machine that weighs over 34 tons. It is the heart of the system, the place where the raw mechanical force of falling water is transmuted into invisible rivers of electrical energy. Finally, after years of Herculean effort, the moment of truth arrives. It is the night of November 16th, 1896. Inside the powerhouse, the air is electric with anticipation. Engineers and dignitaries watch as the switch is thrown, with a low hum that quickly grows into a powerful, steady whine. The giant generators begin to spin. The system is live. Power, clean and potent, is flowing from the falls. But the real test is not here, in the powerhouse. It's 25 miles away, in the city of Buffalo, New York. People are gathered in the streets, looking up at the electric lamps. Wires have been strung all the way from Niagara. a feat impossible just a few years earlier. A signal is sent. And then, the lights of Buffalo flicker and blaze to life. Factories begin to hum. Streetcars begin to move, all powered by the distant, thundering waterfall. For the first time in history, a major city was being lit and powered by a waterfall 25 miles away. The very idea that you could get your power from a source you couldn't see, that was clean, cheap, and seemingly limitless, was a complete game changer. It was the definitive end of the war of currents. It was the dawn of the age of hydroelectric power. And it was, in every sense, the moment that Nikola Tesla's vision, born in a lightning storm and nurtured in the quiet laboratory of his mind, truly and finally illuminated the world. With the world now lit by his system and Niagara's power flowing, you might think Tesla would take a well-deserved victory lap. You might imagine him settling into a comfortable role as a celebrated consultant, growing wealthy from his royalties, a king of the new electrical age he had created. But Nikola Tesla's mind was not built for comfort or for rest. The completion of one grand dream only cleared the way for an even more audacious one. While his contemporaries were busy wiring the world, Tesla was already thinking about unwiring it. His new obsession, the one that would consume the rest of his life, was wirelessness. He dreamed of a world with no power lines, no telegraph cables, a world where energy and information could be broadcast through the air and the earth itself, freely available to all. To chase this dream, he needed a new kind of laboratory. He needed isolation. He needed space. And he needed thunderstorms. So, in the summer of 1899, he turns his back on the bustling cities of the East Coast and heads west. You follow him to the high, dry plains of Colorado Springs. It was the perfect location for his work. The high altitude and low humidity made the air more conducive for his high-voltage experiments, and the region's frequent, spectacular lightning storms provided a natural laboratory for him to study the planet's own electrical behavior. He basically went looking for a neighborhood with more thunderstorms and fewer neighbors to complain about the noise. There, on a patch of empty prairie with Pikes Peak looming in the distance, a strange structure begins to rise. It's a large, barn-like building, but unlike any barn you've ever seen. It has a retractable roof that can be rolled back to prevent it from catching fire. And out of the center of this roof juts a truly bizarre appendage, a 142-foot-tall metal tower, topped with a large copper sphere. At night, when the experiments begin, the whole building seems to hum and glow with an eerie blue light. It looked less like a science lab and more like the secret lair of a very ambitious, electrically minded supervillain. Inside this strange building is the purpose for its existence, the magnifying transmitter. It is, in essence, the most powerful and sophisticated Tesla coil ever built, a gigantic, 3-coil transformer designed to generate electricity at stupefyingly high frequencies and voltages in the millions. But its purpose wasn't just to make big sparks. Tesla's theory was revolutionary and, to most, unbelievable. He believed that the Earth itself was a massive conductor. He planned to use his magnifying transmitter to pump enormous pulses of electrical energy into the planet, creating stationary waves that would ripple through the Earth's crust. If he could do this, he reasoned, then anyone, anywhere on the globe, with a simple receiving device, could tap into this energy. You could stick a rod in the ground in the middle of the Sahara Desert and power a light bulb, or receive a message sent from Colorado, It was a vision of breathtaking audacity. You find yourself with him late one night inside the humming laboratory. The experience is an assault on the senses. The air is thick with the sharp, clean scent of ozone. A constant, deep hum from the machinery vibrates through the wooden floorboards and up into your bones. The massive primary and secondary coils of the transmitter glow with a ghostly blue corona, an effect known as Saint Elmo's fire, which also dances along every sharp metal edge in the lab. Tesla himself is a picture of concentration, his tall frame silhouetted against the crackling equipment, his ears plugged with cotton to dull the incredible noise. He gives a signal. An assistant throws a switch, and all hell breaks loose. The magnifying transmitter roars to life, and with a sound like the sky tearing apart, a bolt of man-made lightning, thick as a man's arm, erupts from the copper ball on the tower and crashes into the ground 100 feet away. Then another, and another. He is creating lightning bolts over 130 feet long, producing thunder that can be heard in the mining town of Cripple Creek, more than 15 miles away. Local residents watch in awe from a distance as the strange laboratory shoots brilliant, violent streamers of purple and white light into the night sky. He noted in his diary that the sparks were so powerful they created an electrical wind strong enough to carry butterflies, which he saw rising and falling on the invisible currents. He keeps pushing the machine, wanting to test its absolute limits. One night, he orders his assistant to throw the switch and not let go until he says so. The transmitter builds to a deafening crescendo, the lightning bolts growing more and more intense. And then, suddenly, everything stops. The roar, the light, the hum all gone. An unnerving silence falls over the lab, and in the distance, through the lab's window, they see that the lights of Colorado Springs have also gone out. In his quest to power the world, he had accidentally discovered the off switch for an entire city. He had drawn so much current that he had overloaded and burned out the main generator at the El Paso Electric Company, a feature the electric company was not particularly thrilled about. But it wasn't the artificial lightning that was the most profound discovery of his time in Colorado, at least not to him. In the quieter moments, when the transmitter was off, he would sit with his highly sensitive receiving equipment, listening to the electrical pulse of the planet. And one night, he detected something strange, faint, rhythmic clicks, beeps in a clear mathematical sequence. 1, 2, 3. He checked and rechecked his equipment, ruling out any known terrestrial source or atmospheric disturbance. The true source of these signals remains one of science's most intriguing unsolved mysteries, debated to this day. Were they simply misunderstood radio waves from distant thunderstorms? Was he detecting the magnetic field of Jupiter's moon? Io, as some have theorized. Or could it have been the signal from a pulsar, a celestial object whose regular radio pulses wouldn't be officially discovered by science for another 67 years, Tesla himself, however, allowed his mind to go to a more spectacular conclusion. He believed he was the first human in history to receive a message from another world, likely Mars. After 9 months of earth shaking, city blacking out, and potentially planet-to-planet communicating experiments, his funding ran out. He left Colorado Springs in 1900, his notebooks filled with priceless data, and his mind now consumed with building a global system based on what he had learned. The strange barn on the prairie was dismantled, its secrets scattered, but the legend of his time there would only grow. a strange and wonderful chapter about a man who went to the mountains to steal the thunder from the gods, and who, in the process, may have heard the whispers of the stars. He returns from the mountains of Colorado a changed man. You see him step off the train in New York City in 1900, not with the quiet satisfaction of the engineer who tamed Niagara, but with the fervent, almost feverish zeal of a prophet who has seen the future. In his luggage, he carries notebooks filled with the complex formulas and observations from his time in the high prairie. To him, these notebooks are more valuable than gold. They are the blueprint for his magnum opus, the project that would dwarf even the lighting of the world. He was now ready to connect it. He called it, simply, the World Telegraphy System. Imagine him now, in the opulent, wood-paneled offices of the city's financial titans. He is tall and immaculately dressed, his intensity burning as brightly as ever. He lays out his vision, a plan so far ahead of its time, it must have sounded like pure science fiction. He describes a single, powerful transmission station that would serve as the nerve center for the entire globe. This station wouldn't just send simple Morse code dots and dashes, it would broadcast, wirelessly, news, stock market reports, musical performances, private telephone messages, and even pictures to any point on the planet. Anyone could receive these signals with a simple, handheld device. He was basically pitching the invention of the internet, streaming services, and the global power grid, all before most people even had a telephone. And this was just the public part of his plan. The secret, more radical ambition he learned in Colorado was that this same system could transmit electrical power itself. To build such a world-changing device, he needed a world-changing amount of money. And in the America of 1900, that meant going to one man, the powerful, formidable banker John Pierpont Morgan, better known as J. P. Morgan. Morgan was not an idealist, he was an industrialist. He built empires of steel and railroads, and he was interested in technologies he could control and, most importantly, meter. Historians have long debated the exact nature of Tesla's pitch to the great financier. Did he deliberately and cynically mislead Morgan by focusing only on the most commercial aspect of his plan? Or was he so caught up in the grandeur of his own vision that he genuinely believed that proving one part of it would be enough to secure the funding for the rest, whatever his intent? Tesla tailored his pitch. He knew Morgan was locked in a battle for control of communication lines, including the expensive and fragile transatlantic telegraph cables, and he knew a young Italian inventor, Guglielmo Marconi, was making headlines with his own attempts at wireless telegraphy. So Tesla presented Wardenclyffe to Morgan primarily as a superior radio broadcasting tower, a communications tool that would make Marconi's system look like a child's toy and render the transatlantic cables obsolete. He promised Morgan he could send messages across the ocean, a feat that would give the banker absolute dominance over world communications. The more radical idea, the wireless transmission of free power, he kept close to his chest. Morgan, intrigued by the prospect of beating both the cable companies and Marconi, agreed. He invested an initial $150,000 to build the first great tower. With Morgan's money in hand, Tesla acquired a 200-acre plot of land in the quiet rural community of Shoreham, Long Island. He named the site Wardenclyffe, and there, amidst the potato fields, construction began on the physical manifestation of his wildest dreams. You watch as the tower begins to rise throughout 1901. It is a structure of breathtaking and bizarre beauty. an octagonal framework of enormous wooden beams, intricately latticed together, climbs 187 feet into the sky. It is topped by a massive, 68-foot-wide steel dome, weighing 55 tons. From a distance, it looked like a giant, elegant, wooden mushroom had sprouted on Long Island, ready to signal its alien mothership. But the most important part of the tower was unseen. Beneath it, a deep, circular shaft was sunk into the earth. And from this shaft, 16 iron pipes were driven 300 feet further down into the ground. This was not a foundation. It was, in Tesla's own words, how the tower would get a grip on the earth, allowing him to pump his electrical waves directly into the planet's crust. Beside the tower, a magnificent laboratory and workshop building of red brick was constructed, designed by the famed architect Stanford White, a friend so captivated by Tesla's vision that he did the work for free. A whole community began to spring up around the project, a small town built on the promise of a utopian future, with the strange and silent tower at its heart. The problem was that Tesla's vision was always grander than his budget. The $150,000 from Morgan was quickly consumed by the construction of the tower and the lab. He needed much more to complete the most critical component, the complex and powerful transmitting equipment that would be housed within the tower and lab. He went back to Morgan for more funds, but the banker was growing cautious. Then, in December 1901, disaster struck, not in the form of a storm or a fire, but as a faint series of clicks from across the ocean. Guglielmo Marconi, using a system far simpler and cheaper than Tesla's, successfully transmitted the Morse code signal for the letter S from Cornwall, England, to Newfoundland, Canada. Marconi had been first. The news was a bombshell. It proved transatlantic wireless communication was possible, and it did so without the need for a gigantic, mushroom-shaped tower and a mysterious earth-gripping root system. For J.P. Morgan, the primary business case for his investment had just vanished in a last, desperate act. Tesla went back to Morgan. He laid all his cards on the table. He confessed that the tower was never just about sending messages. He explained the full, magnificent scope of his dream, a global system for broadcasting light, information, and power, available to all, potentially for free. It was a plea from a visionary, but to the cold, hard logic of a banker, it was a confession of folly. Telling the world's most powerful banker that your master plan is to give something away for free is generally not considered a winning business strategy. The question for Morgan was simple if you can't put a meter on it. How can you make money from it? Morgan's reply was decisive. There would be no more money. The funding was cut, and as the news reached Tesla, you can almost feel the cold dread wash over him. His magnificent tower, standing silent and incomplete against the Long Island sky, was no longer a beacon of the future. It was a monument to a dream that was beginning to die. The partnership between Nikola Tesla and J&P Morgan was never a meeting of kindred spirits. It was a temporary, fragile alliance between two radically different kinds of power. They were two men trying to build a new world together, but one had brought a toolbox and a ledger, and the other had brought a book of poetry and a map of the stars. With Morgan's final, decisive no, that alliance is shattered, and the fundamental incompatibility of their visions is laid bare. This section of our journey isn't about lightning bolts or whirring dynamos. It's about the quiet, intractable conflict between the dreamer and the banker, a conflict that would ultimately seal the fate of Wardenclyffe. You have to understand J.P. Morgan to understand why the dream died. Morgan was not a villain in this story. He was simply operating by a different set of laws. He was a force of nature in his own right, a man who saw the chaotic, competing, and inefficient world of early capitalism and sought to impose order upon it. He didn't invent steel or railroads. He consolidated them into massive, efficient, and profitable trusts. His genius was in structure, in control, and in capitalization. For him, a technology's worth was measured by its practicality, its profitability, and above all, its ability to be owned and controlled. He was the architect of the tangible world, a world of assets you could count and dividends you could collect. Then there was Tesla. He was the architect of the intangible. His mind operated in the ethereal realms of frequency, resonance, and potential. He saw the universe not as a collection of resources to be owned, but as a symphony of energies to be tapped into. His goal wasn't to consolidate power in the hands of a few, but to liberate it for the benefit of all. He believed that science, in its purest form, should be a gift to humanity. This philosophy was the very engine of his creativity. But in the world of Gilded Age finance, it was his greatest liability. After Morgan pulls the plug, Tesla begins a frantic, heartbreaking campaign to win him back. You can almost feel his desperation as he pens letter after letter to the great financier. He was essentially sending the 1900s equivalent of increasingly frantic you-up texts to the world's most powerful and least responsive financier. In these letters, he tries every conceivable tactic. He appeals to Morgan's ego, reminding him that the Tesla system is known throughout the world and that their names are linked. He appeals to his patriotism, arguing that Wardenclyffe will make America the undisputed leader of global technology. He tries to reassure him about the finances, providing new calculations and projections. He emphasizes the communication aspects, the part of the plan Morgan had actually agreed to, arguing that his tower would still be vastly superior to Marconi's system. But it's too little, too late. The trust has been broken. Morgan's response is a profound and terrifying silence. From his skyscraper office on Wall Street, the world looks very different. Marconi has already sent a signal across the Atlantic. The race, as he saw it, was over. Tesla had not only failed to be first, but had also confessed that the project's true goal was something Morgan found commercially nonsensical. The investment was a loss. In Morgan's world, you cut your losses and you move on. He was busy assembling U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation. He was negotiating with governments and restructuring entire industries. The strange, beautiful mushroom on Long Island was a rounding error in his vast financial empire, a flight of fancy he no longer had the time or inclination to entertain. A question that still divides historians is was Morgan's withdrawal based purely on a cold business calculation that Marconi had made the investment obsolete, or was he also actively, philosophically opposed to Tesla's ultimate goal? Was he perhaps shrewd enough to see that a world of free, broadcasted energy would be a profound threat to the very structure of the industrial world he was building? A world that relied on the centralized control of resources like coal, oil, and, yes, electricity. Some see him as simply a disappointed investor, while others see him as the man who deliberately extinguished a light because he couldn't figure out how to sell the bulbs. The chasm between their realities is thrown into stark relief during the great financial panic of 1907. The stock market is in freefall. Banks are collapsing, and the entire American economy is on the brink of ruin. While Tesla is out on Long Island, struggling to pay his handful of remaining workers and fighting off creditors, J.P. Morgan is single-handedly saving the country. He gathers the nation's top financiers in his library, locks the door, and forces them to commit their own fortunes to stabilize the system. He becomes, for a time, the de facto central bank of the United States. While Tesla was trying to figure out how to power the world, Morgan was busy making sure the world still had a functioning economy to power. Priorities, I suppose. This brings us to the core of their conflict, a question that has become legendary, even if it's likely apocryphal. When Tesla finally confessed his full vision of wireless power for all, Morgan is said to have asked him a simple, devastating question: where do we put the meter? That single sentence encapsulates the canyon between their two minds. For Morgan, if you couldn't measure it, bill it, and profit from it, it wasn't a business. For Tesla, the idea of putting a meter on a universal natural energy source was like putting a meter on the air we breathe. It was an absurdity. And so, the magnificent tower at Wardenclyffe begins its slow, sad decay. The hum of machinery ceases. The windows of the laboratory grow dusty. Weeds begin to reclaim the grounds. The beautiful copper dome, once a symbol of a radiant future, begins to oxidize and dull under the salty Long Island air. Tesla, his funds exhausted and his credit destroyed, spirals into a deeper financial and emotional crisis. The tower stands there, silent and imposing, a monument not just to a brilliant idea, but to a fundamental clash of civilizations, the unstoppable force of visionary idealism meeting the immovable object of practical capitalism. And in this battle, the banker, not the dreamer, held all the power. The silence from J.P. Morgan's office is the final nail in Wardenclyffe's coffin. The dream is over, for several years. Tesla struggles to find other investors, but the failure is too public, his vision too radical. The magnificent tower, his beacon of a wireless world, stands as a hollow, rusting monument to what might have been. The debts mount, relentless and crushing. In 1915, he is forced into foreclosure. The beautiful brick laboratory designed by Stanford White is sold. Finally, in 1917, with the United States now embroiled in the First World War, the tower itself is dynamited and demolished. The government, fearing German spies could use it as a landmark or a radio post, orders it torn down. The scrap metal from the once great structure is sold for a pittance to help pay off his endless debts. Watching the tower fall must have felt like a part of his own soul being torn down. With the collapse of his grandest project, something inside Tesla collapses as well. The public figure, the celebrated inventor who once stood as an equal to Edison, retreats. He withdraws from the world of industry and invention and begins a long, slow fade into a life of isolation and profound eccentricity. He no longer has a home, a laboratory, or a grand workshop. His new reality is a nomadic existence, moving from one fine New York hotel to another, from the Waldorf Astoria to the St. Regis, and finally to the Hotel New Yorker. He essentially became the world's most brilliant and probably most demanding long-term hotel guest. You can see him in these later years, a familiar but spectral figure on the streets of Manhattan. He is still impeccably dressed in his formal, old-world suits, a tall, gaunt figure gliding through the city's crowds. But he is a man out of time, a ghost of the electrical age he had helped create. His obsessive-compulsive tendencies, which had been present his whole life, now become his defining characteristics. He is terrified of germs, constantly washing his hands and using piles of napkins at every meal. You have to imagine, the hotel maids had a very specific and very long list of instructions for cleaning Mr. Tesla's room. He calculates the cubic volume of his food before eating it. He does everything in multiples of 3. From the number of times he circles a block before entering a building to the number of napkins he uses. He is a man trapped in a prison of his own meticulous rituals. His primary connection to the outside world becomes a strange annual tradition. On his birthday, he holds a press conference in his hotel, inviting reporters to hear his latest pronouncements. These events are a bizarre mix of genuine scientific insight and what seems to be pure fantasy. He announces the invention of a death ray capable of destroying 10,000 airplanes from 250 miles away. He talks of harnessing cosmic rays and communicating with Mars. The press doesn't know what to make of him. Is he a lonely old man spinning tall tales? Or is he a misunderstood genius still light years ahead of everyone else? He is no longer shaping the present. He is simply issuing bulletins from his own private future. In this lonely, hermetic existence, he finds solace in the most unlikely of companions, the common city pigeons of New York. Every day, like clockwork, he walks from his hotel to Bryant Park or the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral. There, he is no longer the failed inventor or the eccentric scientist. He is simply the pigeon man. This is not a casual hobby. It is a deep, emotional, and vital connection. You can see him on a park bench, a serene smile on his face, as dozens of birds flock to him. They land on his shoulders, his head, his outstretched arms. He speaks to them in soft tones, calling them by names he has given them. In a world of financial betrayals and intellectual dismissals, the pigeons offer something pure, simple, unconditional affection. He could care for them, and they, in their way, seem to care for him back. His devotion deepens into a quiet obsession. He begins bringing injured birds back to his hotel room, turning his expensive suite into a makeshift avian hospital. It certainly gave a new and very literal meaning to the concept of room service. Imagine the scene, one of the 20th century's greatest minds, in a room at the Waldorf Astoria, using his precise engineering mind to design tiny splints for a pigeon's broken wing or a tiny brace for a broken leg. He orders special seed blends to be delivered by the hotel, spending money he barely has to ensure his feathered friends are well cared for. And among the hundreds of pigeons he cared for, there was one that he loved above all others. He described her as a beautiful, pure white dove. To him, she was not just a bird, she was a friend, a confidant, a kindred spirit. He claimed he loved her as a man loves a woman, and she loved him. He said that as long as he had her, he had a purpose in his life. Psychologists and biographers have offered various interpretations of this intense connection. Was it a heartbreakingly poignant symbol of his profound loneliness? Was it a sign of a deeper psychological breakdown, a mind-seeking connection wherever it could find it? Or was it, perhaps, simply what he said? It was a unique and deeply felt, if unusual, bond with another living creature, a mind that saw consciousness and beauty where others saw only a common bird. The story reaches its strange and heartbreaking conclusion one night in his hotel room. As he later told the story, the white dove flew in through his open window. But this time was different. He knew, with absolute certainty, that she had come to tell him she was dying. And as he held her, he claimed a light began to emanate from her eyes, a brilliant, blinding white light more powerful and intense than anything he had ever been able to generate with his massive coils and transmitters. The light filled the room, and then it faded. The dove died in his hands, and at that moment, Tesla said, he knew his life's work was finished. The dynamo that had powered his incredible mind for decades had finally sputtered to a stop. The universe, he believed, had given him a final, beautiful, and heartbreaking signal. The death of the white dove marked a turning point. The moment Tesla declared his own life's work finished. But to say his mind stopped working would be to misunderstand the very nature of the man. The great dynamo might have been disconnected from the world of commerce and construction, but it never, ever stopped spinning. His body may have been confined to a succession of hotel rooms, but his imagination still roamed the cosmos freely. He no longer had a laboratory of wood and wire, so his mind became his only workshop. He stopped building, but he never stopped inventing. The blueprints for the future just piled up, unbuilt, in the quiet archives of his consciousness. Our only glimpse into this final, fascinating period of his creative life comes from those annual birthday press conferences. As he grew older, these events became less about reporting on tangible achievements and more like receiving transmissions from another dimension. You can picture the scene: a crowd of jaded, cigar-chomping reporters gathered in a hotel ballroom, half expecting a circus act, while this tall, skeletal figure calmly outlines technologies that would reshape the world, if only someone would build them. His most famous and most sensational late-life concept was a weapon he called Teleforce, which the press immediately and breathlessly dubbed the death ray. But Tesla was very specific that it was not a ray. He scoffed at the idea of using unfocused energy, which dissipates over distance. His invention was a particle beam accelerator. It was a system that would use massive electrostatic repulsion to fire a concentrated stream of tiny tungsten or mercury pellets at incredible velocities, guided by an invisible beam of energy. He claimed this stream would be so powerful it could bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy aircraft from 250 miles away. But here is the fascinating, paradoxical twist. He pitched it as a weapon of peace. He believed that if every country possessed this ultimate defensive weapon, it would create an impenetrable shield, making offensive warfare impossible. His idea of world peace was essentially giving every country a giant "do not disturb" sign, backed up by a particle accelerator. A bold strategy. It was a terrifyingly destructive device conceived for a purely utopian purpose, a perfect encapsulation of his strange and brilliant mind. While the peace beam remained a theoretical concept, another of his later inventions was very real, and just as brilliant. It was the Tesla turbine. In a world of complex, bladed engines, Tesla's turbine was a marvel of simplicity. It had no blades at all. Instead, it used a series of smooth, perfectly balanced, spinning discs, stacked like records in a jukebox. As fluid or gas was injected into the casing, it would naturally adhere to the surfaces of the discs due to a principle called the boundary layer effect, dragging them along and spinning the rotor at incredible speeds. It was a typically Tesla invention, impossibly clever, mind-bendingly simple, and about 50 years too early for anyone to know what to do with it. He claimed it was far more efficient and durable than any bladed turbine. It remains a subject of speculation among engineers and physicists whether the bladeless turbine, if built today with modern materials and computer-aided precision, could truly revolutionize power generation as Tesla claimed. or if its practical limitations in managing heat and fluid dynamics are simply too great to overcome. Whatever its ultimate potential, it stands as a testament to his ability to see a problem from an angle nobody else had even considered. His mind also soared to even grander concepts for powering the world, ideas that make Wardenclyffe seem almost modest. He spoke of developing ways to tap into the planet's own internal heat, proposing a system of geothermal energy decades before it became a mainstream concept. He became obsessed with the idea of harnessing what he called cosmic rays, the constant shower of energy particles bombarding the Earth from outer space. He believed this was a limitless source of free energy, if only we were clever enough to build the right antenna to receive it. He was, in essence, trying to plug the planet directly into the universe's own power grid. And perhaps strangest of all was his musing on a thought camera. He reasoned that thinking about an object creates a clear image in the mind. This mental image, he theorized, must be projected onto the retina of the eye in the same way an external image is. Therefore, he speculated, it should be possible to build a machine sensitive enough to photograph this retinal image. If he could do that, he could literally take a picture of a person's thoughts. It's a concept that tiptoes on the very edge of science and mysticism, a machine that could bridge the gap between consciousness and the physical world, the ultimate invasion of privacy. Imagine trying to keep a secret when your brain is basically a leaky photo album. The death ray, the bladeless engine, the geothermal plant, the thought camera, they all seem so different. But a single, powerful thread connects them all. It is the same thread that runs through his work with alternating current and wireless power, a lifelong quest to understand and harness the fundamental, invisible forces of the universe. He was never content to merely improve the machines of man. He wanted to tap into the machinery of God. In these final decades, his body was a prisoner of age and circumstance, pacing the carpet of a New York hotel room, but his mind was still out there, on the unbound frontiers of science, sketching blueprints for futures we have yet to build, leaving behind a legacy not only of what he did, but of all the incredible things he still dreamed of doing. Our journey now draws toward its inevitable, quiet close. You follow the ghost of a great inventor to his final earthly address, the Hotel New Yorker. He moved there in 1934, and it would be his home for the last decade of his life. It's a striking contrast, this setting for his final act. The hotel itself is a towering, Art Deco monument to the very modernity he helped birth. Its lobby bustles with the energy of a world hurtling forward, a world of travelers, businessmen, and socialites, all living in the bright, electric glow that was his legacy. But high above the city's hum, on the 33rd floor, Tesla lives in a self-imposed exile, his world shrinking day by day. His routine, once a series of long, purposeful strides across the city, is now a slow, careful shuffle. He is in his 80s, a man frail and thin as a reed. The long walks to Bryant Park to visit his feathered friends become shorter, and then they stop altogether. He is no longer able to make the journey. Instead, he pays Western Union messengers to go and feed the pigeons for him. A final, fading connection to the only creatures he felt truly understood him. His universe, which once encompassed the entire planet and the stars beyond, has now contracted to the size of his two-room suite, room 3327 where he slept, and 3328 where he worked and kept his papers. He is a king in a borrowed room, a monarch of a vast and invisible empire, ruling from a kingdom of hotel stationery and memories. In the first week of January 1943, he hangs his customary "Do Not Disturb" sign on the outside of his door. This is nothing new. For a man who felt he could communicate with the cosmos, he was also a big fan of the simple, earthly "Do Not Disturb" sign. He often used it to ensure absolute privacy when he was deep in a calculation or a thought experiment. The hotel staff, long accustomed to his eccentricities, respects his wishes. One day passes, then two. On the morning of January 8th, a hotel maid named Alice Monahan, who had grown fond of the quiet, courteous old gentleman in 3327, becomes concerned. She hasn't seen him emerge, hasn't heard a sound. Overcoming her hesitation, she decides to ignore the sign. She uses her master key and gently pushes the door open. The room is quiet. It is still. The air is heavy with the silence of a great machine that is finally powered down. There, in his bed, lies Nikola Tesla. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep sometime in the preceding 2 days. The official cause was coronary thrombosis, a blood clot in his heart. The man who was born in a lightning storm, who had created lightning with his own hands, had left the world not with a bang, but with a quiet, final exhalation. He was 86 years old. The news of his death ripples through the city, and the story takes an immediate turn towards intrigue. His nephew, Sava Kosanovic, the Yugoslav ambassador to the United States, rushes to the hotel. He is worried. He knows his uncle claimed to have designs for a powerful superweapon, the Teleforce beam, and with the world engulfed in World War II, he fears what might become of these papers. But he is too late. The United States government is already moving. Before Kosanovic can secure the room, men from a little-known federal agency, the Office of Alien Property, arrive because Tesla was a naturalized citizen, and because of the nature of his claims during wartime, they assert jurisdiction. It seems even in death, Tesla was considered a potential national security event. They seal room 3327 and seize everything. Decades of a life's work trunks filled with notebooks, schematics, letters, photographs, and models are confiscated and classified. The tangible remnants of his incredible mind become the property of the U.S. government. These captured documents are the source of endless fascination and speculation. To get an expert opinion, the government turns them over to a highly respected electrical engineer and professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a man by the name of John G. Trump. After 3 weeks of analysis, Professor Trump delivers his official report. His conclusion is methodical and, for many, deeply disappointing. He states that Tesla's efforts in his later years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, and that his papers contained no new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. The official verdict was, in essence, nothing to see here, folks. Which, of course, is the best way to convince people that there is absolutely, definitely something to see here. Conspiracy theories have swirled for decades about those missing papers in that official report. Was John G. Trump's assessment correct? Was Tesla, in his final years, truly more of a philosopher than a physicist? Or did the professor, acting under government orders, discover something revolutionary, a workable plan for the death ray, or a new energy source, and intentionally bury it under a mountain of dismissive paperwork, its secrets locked away forever in a classified government vault? We may never know for sure. What we do know is that on January 12, 1943, a grand funeral service was held for him at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Over 2,000 people attended, a mix of Nobel laureates, inventors, industrial leaders, and ordinary New Yorkers who simply wanted to pay their respects to the strange, brilliant man who had lit up their world. It was a final, public acknowledgement of his monumental life. Afterwards, his body was taken to be cremated, his earthly form reduced to ash, just as his tower had been reduced to scrap. Those ashes were eventually placed inside a golden, spherical urn designed to look like one of his own Tesla coils, where they remain today, displayed at the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade, a perfect, elegant, and resonant final resting place for the king who died in a borrowed room. With the golden sphere of his ashes safely enshrined, our story should end. The great man has died. His funeral has been held, his papers seized. But a story as electric as Nikola Tesla's doesn't simply stop. Sometimes, it just goes silent for a while. And the silence that fell over Tesla's legacy in the decades following his death is one of the most curious parts of his entire journey. The man who had lit the world, who had won the war of currents and tamed Niagara Falls, was, for a time, almost completely forgotten. You find yourself drifting through the middle decades of the 20th century, a world humming with the very AC power that was his greatest triumph. Yet, his name is nowhere to be found. Ask anyone on the street who invented the modern world, and they would give you one confident answer: Thomas Edison. Edison's legacy was a masterclass in public relations and corporate branding. The company he founded, General Electric, became a global behemoth, putting his name and his story into every home. His practical, all-American, sleeves-rolled-up persona was easy to mythologize. He was the hero of the story. History, it seems, is often written by those who hold the patents on the light bulbs used to read it. Tesla, by contrast, had no company to carry his name forward. He was a lone wolf, an ethereal visionary who left behind ideas, not industries. And so, it became easy to sideline him, to caricature him. His later years, full of obsessive rituals, birthday pronouncements of death rays, and his deep love for pigeons, were retroactively applied to his entire life. The narrative became that of the mad scientist. He was cast as a brilliant but tragic figure who started strong but ultimately lost his way, a supporting character in Edison's heroic tale. This framing made him a fascinating curiosity, a piece of scientific folklore, but not a foundational architect of the modern age. He was the strange, spectral uncle in the family tree of invention. Nowhere was this historical amnesia more apparent than in the story of the radio. For most of the 20th century, if you looked in a textbook or an encyclopedia, you would learn that the inventor of the radio was the Italian nobleman Guglielmo Marconi. It was Marconi who won the Nobel Prize in 1909 for his work in wireless telegraphy. It was Marconi whose name was synonymous with broadcasting. Tesla's own crucial, foundational patents in radio technology, filed in the 1890s long before Marconi's famous transatlantic signal, were largely ignored, buried under the weight of Marconi's fame and corporate power. But then, a strange, quiet vindication occurred. In 1943, just a few short months after Tesla died penniless in his hotel room, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a landmark decision. The case was Marconi Wireless Telegraph Co. of America v. United States. After decades of litigation, the nation's highest court overturned Marconi's key American radio patents. They ruled that Tesla's prior art, his patents from 1897, had anticipated and established all the fundamental principles of radio tuning and transmission. in the cold, hard language of the law. The Supreme Court of the United States effectively declared Nikola Tesla the true inventor of the radio. It was a monumental posthumous victory, and almost no one noticed. The ruling was dense and technical, handed down in the middle of a world war that consumed every headline. There was no grand announcement, no rewriting of the textbooks. He was declared the father of radio, but it was like winning the lottery after you've already passed away. The timing could have been better. So the popular story remained unchanged. Marconi kept his fame, and Tesla remained a footnote. Why Tesla's name faded so completely for half a century is a complex issue, but many historians point to this combination of factors, the powerful, self-perpetuating myth of Thomas Edison, Tesla's lack of a corporate entity to champion his legacy, his own mad scientist reputation, which made him easy to dismiss, and the quiet, technical nature of his greatest posthumous victory. For a while there, Tesla was basically the patron saint of brilliant engineers and people who suspected the government was hiding aliens. He was a cult figure, not a historical one, but like one of his own resonant energy waves. His story never truly dissipated. It just kept vibrating at a low frequency, waiting for the right receivers to tune in. That process began in the counterculture movements of the 1960s and 70s, a new generation, deeply skeptical of corporate narratives and government authority, rediscovered his story, and it fit their worldview perfectly. Here was the ultimate anti-establishment hero, a lone, spiritual, otherworldly genius who provided clean, free energy to the world, only to be crushed by the forces of capitalism and a cynical government. He became an icon for a new age, his name whispered in circles of technologists, futurists, and dreamers. The echoes of his life, once lost in the static of mainstream history, were beginning to be heard again, clearer and stronger than ever before. The quiet whispers of a forgotten genius, echoing in the static of the 20th century, did not fade away. Instead, they found a new medium, a new global network that, in its own way, was the fulfillment of his wildest prophecies. The rise of the internet at the end of the century changed everything. Suddenly, history was no longer solely in the hands of publishers and textbook committees. Information became decentralized, and anyone with a connection could dig through the archives, unearthing the stories that had been left behind. And the story they found, the one that captivated a new generation of dreamers and builders, was Nikola Tesla's. He was a figure perfectly suited for the digital age. His vision of a world system for broadcasting information to handheld devices sounded less like a century-old fantasy and more like a direct prophecy of the internet and the smartphone. His idealistic, almost open-source approach to science resonated with a tech culture that was, in its early days, built on sharing and collaboration. He wasn't just an inventor, he was an icon, a symbol of a different way of thinking. He became the thinking person's mad scientist, the rock star of the electrical engineering set. His image began to blossom in popular culture. He appeared as a master of arcane science in films and novels, a wizard of the modern age. He became a character in video games, a hero in comic books, his name synonymous with brilliant, world-changing, and slightly dangerous ideas. But the single greatest factor in his resurrection from historical footnote to household name had nothing to do with a book or a movie. It came in the form of a car. When a new company was founded in the early 21st century, with the audacious goal of challenging the fossil fuel empire by building high-performance electric vehicles. They needed a name. They needed a symbol of pioneering electrical genius and anti-establishment bravado. The choice was obvious. They called their company Tesla. It's probably the single greatest posthumous branding victory in the history of invention. Now, his name is everywhere, a global brand, but his true legacy is not a car, as brilliant as it may be. His real legacy is quieter, more fundamental, and all-encompassing. It is in the very air you are breathing and the walls that surround you. It's in the silent, steady hum of the electrical grid, the alternating current that powers the lamp you might be reading by, a direct descendant of the system he fought for against the immense power of Edison. It is the child of the generators that first drew power from the roaring heart of Niagara Falls. His legacy is in the radio waves that carry voices and music through the air, and in the resonant frequencies that underpin the Wi-Fi connecting your device to the world. We live our lives bathed in the invisible rivers of information he first dreamed of. We just call it Wi-Fi, and we mostly use it to look at pictures of cats. The extent to which Tesla foresaw our modern digital world is, of course, impossible to measure, but the parallels are too stunning to ignore. He spoke of a world brain, a system that would allow for the instantaneous connection of all people and all knowledge. He envisioned a future of limitless, clean energy. He believed that technology's ultimate purpose was not profit, but the elevation of human existence, the elimination of war and suffering. These ideas, which seemed like madness to the pragmatic industrialists of his time, now feel remarkably prescient, like messages sent to us from a future he could see more clearly than we can. And so we are left with the final, enduring question: why does his story resonate so deeply with us now? Perhaps it is because we live in an age defined by technological disruption, and we see in him the ultimate disruptor. Perhaps, in a world of corporate uniformity, we yearn for the figure of the lone genius, the individual who can change the world from a laboratory of the mind, or perhaps it's simpler than that. Perhaps we are drawn to the story of a man who, despite repeated, crushing failures, never, ever stopped dreaming. He dreamed of a world of light, a world of connection, a world of wonders. He believed that the universe was filled with a deep and profound magic, and he spent his entire life trying to hand us the key. The light from his incredible mind, like the light from a distant star, took a very long time to reach our eyes, but it is here now, and it is brilliant. And now, the story is over. The journey is complete. You can feel the great hum of his machines begin to fade, replaced by a much softer, quieter hum. Maybe it's the sound of the fan in your room, or the gentle thrum of the city settling down for the night. The towering image of Wardenclyffe dissolves, leaving only the quiet fields of Long Island under a canopy of stars. The roar of Niagara Falls softens to a distant murmur, like the sound of a seashell held to your ear. The crackle of artificial lightning in Colorado gives way to the gentle patter of rain against the window pane, just like the rain that fell on a small house in Smiljan so very long ago. The bright, analytical parts of your mind can rest now. The dates, the names, the debates, you can let them all drift away like wisps of smoke. There are no more problems to solve, no more currents to war over. There is only the stillness of this moment. Here, in the soft darkness, the great dreamer has found his rest. and now you can find yours. His work is done, but the dreams continue, echoing in the quiet spaces. Your own dreams are waiting for you now, in that gentle space just beyond wakefulness. So let your breathing slow, let your thoughts soften, and just drift.